Hey, I'm Chris from Davenport's Dogs. On this podcast, we interview people from all over the pet industry to get to hear some interesting stories and learn more about our precious pets. Today's guest is Ben Vernon. He's a former canine handler for the U.S. Air Force, and he now owns Vernon Dog Training here in Tampa, Florida. We had a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, I'm here with Ben Vernon. He's a U.S. Air Force veteran and a canine handler and owner of Vernon Dog Training. So, welcome, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your background?
My name is Ben Vernon. Like you said, I was an Air Force veteran. I was a canine handler in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force for 6.5 years. I did 4 years in Montana. I was nuclear convoy security, like military police. So I found out that you could go into the canine section, and I thought that was way cooler than what I was doing. And so I started volunteering at the kennels and getting the requirements done. I left for canine training in San Antonio. I did that for 3 months, and then from there I got stationed in Tucson, Arizona. So that's kind of my background. I separated from the Air Force in January 2021, and my wife and I moved here to Tampa in September of last year. So I've been doing my business roughly about 1.5 years now. But in Tampa, I've been doing it for about 8 months.
Oh, that's cool. So I just assumed that the military brought you to Tampa. So you weren't stationed at MacDill. You just came here.
No. So when I separated, I moved to North Carolina to figure out kind of where we were going to go. I started training dogs while I was up there. Realized that it was profitable and it was something I really enjoyed. Really helping people how to deal with their dogs and how to have a calm, happy dog. You know? Yeah. So. From there, once I realized that's where I wanted to go, I looked up most dog-friendly cities in the U.S., and Tampa was number one.
That's awesome. Well, you already answered one of my questions. I was going to ask basically if canine handling in the Air Force, if it was something that you go straight into, or if you have to have, or if it's a program you have to get accepted to after you're in.
So for different branches, they're different. So for the Army, you can go straight in as a canine handler. But every other branch you have to go into like their military police, and then you apply after that. Okay. So it's not even a guaranteed thing.
I was in the Army. I didn't even know that this was an option when I was in the Army, but when we were getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, I had a buddy that went to dog handling school for the Army, but he ended up failing. He didn't get the dog afterwards. But I hear it's pretty tough. It's a pretty tough program to go through. Is it that way in the Air Force?
Yeah, so it's really difficult on how they select you, because they really want like the best, because it's really important on what your job is for. The military has bomb detection, and then they also have drug detection. The drugs isn't as important because it's not really their mission, but they do a lot of deployments and they do a lot of searching for IEDs and different things. So there's a lot of responsibility on you as a E2 through E5, you know, and you're clearing roadways or vehicles, you know, before coming on base or anything. So there's a lot of responsibility, and if you mess up, you know, a lot of people could die. So
yeah, absolutely.
They really push you through a lot of stress to make sure that you can even handle that, and they don't just hand out, you know.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So, did you have any experience training dogs prior? Did you learn it all there?
No, I had no idea. I never owned a dog before, so we lived in a small house when I grew up, so no dogs allowed.
Oh yeah.
So my first dog was Caro. That was MWD Caro. That was the first dog I had. That dog didn't care anything about me. He just wanted to chase lizards, and that was it.
Oh wow. Was that dog was in the military?
That was a military working dog. That was the first dog I was assigned.
Okay.
So I was so excited to get him, but he didn't.
So when you go through the training program, so did they assign you a dog? Do they assign it to you before training or during training, or how does that work?
So you go to training at the whole DoD goes to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, and that's where they have the doggy boot camp, basically. So the dogs go through their own boot camp, basically, and if they pass, it's kind of like SEAL training or any other special forces. There's a high washout rate because they're just not good enough for the standards that they want.
Oh, so the dogs can fail too?
Yeah, for sure. So Just because you have a German Shepherd doesn't mean that it's going to be ready to go. But they have really high standards, and I want to say the washout rate's like 40%, if not higher. So the dogs go through their own boot camp, and they go through all the training and everything. And if they get selected and they say like you're signed off to be good, then they'll send them to wherever the DoD needs them. So like if the Navy needs 3 dogs over at this base, or the Air Force needs this many, or whatever, and it kind of just goes from there. So all the rejects, they go and they stay at Lackland, and they're used as like training tools. And that's where you as a handler, you're assigned 1 dog for a month and a half, 2 months, and that's where you focus on like patrol work. And that's a lot of like your obedience stuff, and like learning how to train, how to work with them, like different requirements for that. It's also teaching you how to search for people. So like doing building searches or doing a field search. If somebody and a bad guy runs away and you have to go find him, how are you going to do that? And you're using a dog that's already been trained that wasn't good enough to do it for like real world, but in a mock,
good for training,
for a mock situation, so you can get your feet wet. So after that, then you get switched over to detection, and that's where you learn how to find bombs. And you have a different dog for that part, and you have that dog every day for a month and a half, 2 months. If you graduate, then you go back to your base, or they send you to a new base.
And you don't take that dog with you?
No, those dogs, each dog stays. They're locked into a base.
Okay.
Excuse me. So when I got to Tucson, there were 7 dogs there, and I was assigned 1 at one time, and then I eventually switched to different dogs while I was there.
Oh, okay. I know you have a German Shepherd now.
Yes.
Is it a boy or girl?
It's a boy.
What's his name?
Phoenix. We got him when we lived in Arizona. So.
Was he an Air Force dog?
No, he was a pet.
Okay.
So we saw a cardboard sign on the side of the road said AKC puppies, and we went and got one.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So I noticed that like the military, police, all first responders, they all use German Shepherds. What is special about German Shepherds? Why is that the dog of choice for military and police?
I think there's a couple reasons. The military is going to buy kind of whatever dog they can, I feel like, or really any type of police work. They really just need a dog that's going to do the work. It's really hard, like how many people. I played basketball in high school, but I'm not LeBron James, so I'm not that level. So dogs are the same thing. So I have a German Shepherd, but he would never pass anything. So whenever they do buying trips, and they'll go to Europe, and they'll buy however many dogs that they like, and they know what they're looking for, like, oh, this dog's doing this, or he doesn't have this fear of loud noises, or this fear of slick floors, or whatever. They have a whole checklist, and they sign off like, okay, this dog is good, and then they buy it and they'll take it back to Lackland. They also do their own breeding program, and they use Malinoises for what they breed. But I think it's also kind of what is most popular. What's the most popular dogs is Labs, Golden Retrievers, German Shepherds, different things. So there's probably a lot more in general. And then you have people that are specialized in breeding and trying to breed for a purpose. And they're, look at most Labs. What are most Labs bred for? They're bred for hunting. And so they're used for certain pieces of that. So I think that's probably the biggest piece of it. With German Shepherds, Malinois, biting dogs, they have to be willing to bite. With Labs, they're bred primarily as a hunting dog, and if you send your retriever after a duck or some type of bird, you don't want that dog like shaking it or whatever. Whereas a German Shepherd, you don't really care because it's a person, it's a bad guy, something like that. So it's just different purposes of what they've been bred for.
Okay.
So that's
that makes
what I would
sense.
say. For the Navy, they even use different like terriers, and they're like this big.
Oh yeah.
And that's what they use for like subs or other ships that are really small.
So when you were in the military and you had your dog, so you as a trainer, are you like, or a dog handler, are you you just bomb detection or just drug detection, or are you kind of trained through all aspects of it?
So you're supposed to be trained on all of it. You want to know what's the thing. So because the military is primarily focused on bombs, because that's the mission and that's what they're worried about, you're supposed to train every situation as being a bomb handler. So that way, if you are on a drug dog and you do get switched over, then you can focus on that and you don't have to worry about different things. Like if we came in here in your office and I'm searching with a drug dog, I can turn on lights, I can knock stuff over, I can do whatever because there's no threat to me. Whereas if I came in here and I think that you're a bomb maker and
you don't want to be touching stuff,
I'm not going to be hitting light switches. I'm going to go very slowly through your doorway to make sure there's no tripwires. I'm not going to step on any mats or anything because there might be pressure plates or all kinds of different things. So you have to, they train you as a bomb dog handler because if you get put on a drug dog, it's just that much easier and you don't have to worry about as many things.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So there's also a lot less drug dogs. So you're primarily going to be on a bomb dog.
Okay. So transitioning to civilian life, tell us tell us about when you started your business and what the challenges were from going to training military dogs into training civilian dogs.
So I started really an accident. I was just in between jobs, just trying to figure out what I was going to do and really everything of my life. And I moved back to my hometown. My parents know a lot of people and they recommended me. And so I got a lot of clients. And so
that's awesome.
I realized like, oh, this is really cool. And it is a lot different, but it's also very similar because there's so much of, as a canine handler, of focusing on obedience and focusing on, keeping your dog calm. There's so many things that you don't realize, but like I did a presidential mission with one dog. His name was Frankie, and he was like a 78-pound German Shepherd, and I had to fly from Tucson to New Jersey. So I went from Tucson to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco to Newark, New Jersey. That's a long flight for having a giant German Shepherd.
When you say presidential mission, that's like you're actually going
to
be security?
I ended up going to President Donald Trump's golf course while he had some party.
Oh, wow.
And I was searching vehicles as they had all that stuff. All the vehicles that going in were searched by me, other canine handlers, other Secret Service canine handlers. So that's one of the cool perks of being a canine handler is you get picked for these kind of things as whatever their need is. So you can go on different presidential missions, vice presidential. Vice President Pence, when he came to Tucson, we ended up searching the flight line. We had to go downtown, do some different things, searching for him just to make sure that he was safe, his route was safe. So there's a lot of perks with it. It's pretty
that's
cool.
pretty cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you asked like how is it transitioning, but a lot of it is the same because a lot of work had to be put into that dog to be calm, and that really benefited me as I went across. It was an 8-hour flight, so
yeah.
What dog is just going to lay there on the floor for 8 hours while you're having turbulence and you're having all these different things?
Neither one of mine.
Yeah, mine either. But there's so much that goes into that you don't see. You just see like, these canine handlers like working, or they're doing detection, or they're doing some type of patrol work. But there's a lot of obedience with that. So that's what I tried to focus on with teaching my clients, is teaching them how to keep their dog calm. Everybody wants a calm dog. Nobody wants a rambunctious, that they can't control. Really all of your problems, if you think about it, is probably because your dog isn't calm. Right? They're pulling on the leash, they're lunging at people, they're jumping on people, they're barking at people, they're biting people. Think of all your problems.
I have all those except for the biting.
Okay. Yeah. So, that's what I try and focus on and try and teach. So. It is a lot different, but it's also a lot of the same things, and it's trying to figure out how do you learn and how can I teach you what's going on, how can I fix your problem, because if I train your dog but I don't train you, then not doing much.
That's what I noticed, or me and my wife have noticed that they'll react different depending on who they're with.
Yeah.
Like, because my wife gets nervous, like if she takes our dogs around, like a dog that she doesn't know, they're more timid and more aggressive. Than when I'm there, then I'm also like, whatever.
Yeah, so it's, a lot of it is going to be, they say, common phrase in the Air Force, I'm sure it was all branches, but that your emotions run down leash.
I've never heard that.
So if you are, if you're nervous, then your dog's going to be nervous. Just like if you're stressed about work or something, your wife is probably going to be stressed too, or like, why are you so stressed? Like, and then she's going to start freaking out, and then you're going to both have issues because of.
That's why my Australian Shepherd's so anxious, because I'm always anxious with this business.
So it's really important to stay calm and to realize, like, hey, you're in control. You know, if you need to remove yourself from the situation, then remove yourself. Don't put yourself through something like that. And it's really about building confidence. The more confident that you are about something, the less likely you're going to be worried about or be anxious about it. And then that's also going to help them as well. So that's just one piece of it. There's so many pieces to put together, and figuring out, like, what is your problem? What is your dog's problem? And how do we fix that?
Well, staying on the topic of my dogs, and I know my dogs are older. They're 7 years old, and I know a lot of people like to adopt older dogs. And there's that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. How do you feel about that, and how would you go about training an older dog? My dogs that I've never properly trained except for set stay, do some tricks for treats. But so how do you feel about that you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I don't think that's true. I think it's in, like, tricks, that's a different story. But, you know, for obedience or just training your dog to be more behaved or to work through things, I think that's something that can be done at any age. Now, if you take, you know, somebody, you said your dog's 7, right? So
they'll be 7 this year.
Okay, so that's a long time in dog years, right? So
yeah,
they're probably halfway or farther, and they've had a long time of keeping these habits and really, like, building on them and making them probably worse. So if you think of if you're a smoker and you've been smoking for 50 years, it's gonna be really hard for you to quit. Can you quit? It depends on how motivated
how hard
you
you try. Yeah.
You know, are you just gonna give up when it gets hard, or are you gonna, like, push through? Now, you might always struggle with that, but you can quit. So that's what I tell people. It's really important on how much effort you're going to put into it and how much you're willing to fix it. It's also important to realize, what are your goals? So your goals are going to be different than my goals, and, like, what you're okay with is different than what I'm okay with. Some people are okay with their dog being in the bed. I'm not. I like to sleep, and I don't want to be waking up. So if my dog is going to wake me up, that's going to upset me and bother me. Other people don't care. Some people let their dog jump on them, like, so they can pet them and say hi. I don't like that. One reason I don't like that is my wife had her appendix taken out 2 years ago. So if my dog would have jumped, that's right there.
It's a big dog.
Yeah. So she probably would have passed out from the pain or something. So there's a lot of factors to think about. Or, you know, if you're in a wet or snowy area or something, your dog jumps on you, you know, then now you could be falling. So I try and really focus on human safety and then dog safety as well. So I'm not going to let my dog do something that might be potentially unsafe.
Okay. One of the things you mentioned earlier about the lunging on the leash, one of our dogs has a problem with that. It's our dogs have always lived in a house since we had them. So we always had a backyard, and when we go to the dog park, they basically just jump in the truck and we go. So they were never properly leash trained. And we just sold our house, moved into an apartment a year ago. And now it's like a new environment, and they're not used to the leashes. They're also not used to having to share their space with other dogs. So I've noticed she's gotten more territorial now too. Yeah. But the lunging thing that she does, like, it's mainly to people, and it's not like an aggressive way. It's more like she's just excited to see somebody, and it scared one of our older neighbors before, like, because we're both coming out the door at the same time. Tilly lunges towards her because she's like, "Oh, hey, what's up?"
Yeah.
And freaks her out. So, like, how could I curb that behavior because it's not something new. Like it's only started happening this year.
What I would focus on is, so you said that you think that it's because she's excited.
Yeah, she's never been aggressive towards a human. It's always she loves attention, and she always wants attention. She gets a little aggressive towards little male dogs sometimes. It's like, I think it's like the territory thing, like where she. But
so if she's getting excited, then I would think, without seeing it or anything, just giving a blind idea, I would think that it's more on she just wants to be pet, and most people they confuse like socialization with the wrong idea. Socialization should mean that your dog should be able to go out in public and not be like a menace, But how society's like idea of socializing your dog is like, oh, you have a dog, I have a dog, let's just let them sniff each other.
Yeah.
And so what does that do? That's going to teach your dog, hey, every time I see a dog, I get to go over there. And that might be good for some dogs, and then bad for other dogs. But for other dogs, some dogs, with them being excited, that's going to create problems in a way of now whenever they see a dog, they might bark or yell or scream or some type of loud, crazy noise because they want to go over there. And it could also be a fear-based thing because they think, oh, like there's a dog, it's going to come at me, or you're going to take me over there or something. So it could be the same thing with a human, where every time they see a human, they think they're going to get pet. So they're looking at that as a reward, and then now she's just looking for any time that she can get something. So every time that she sees a person, she goes, oh, you're going to pet me. This is awesome. And you're over there, I'm over here, let me get over there to you so that you can pet me. So I would try to limit her getting pet by random people, because then she's not going to look at other people as a reward. That's where I would start.
That makes sense. So shifting back to the smaller dogs, at what age, what's the best age for a puppy to start getting trained?
I would start as soon as possible. I mean, different programs are going to have different situations. If you go through some dog trainers, especially if you do it like at their location, they have to be a certain age and make sure they're up on their shots and whatever. But I mean, I would start really as soon as possible, as soon as your trainer is going to allow that. That way, because everybody's a dog trainer, you're just not very good at it.
I'm just a bad one.
Yeah. So if you are constantly training your dog without even realizing it, you're probably training bad things and bad habits. So what I try to focus on is teaching you what to do and what not to do, because that's going to be really important. So if you can start at 6 months or younger, preferably younger, but that's going to help your dog in the long run, so that way it's not your dog being 7 years old and having 7 years of bad habits.
So start at 6. I'm sure it's different for all dogs, but what would the typical time frame be from going from starting training as a puppy to they're properly trained? And you can, I know you're always training, but like, say if they were coming to work with you, how long would you need to work with it before you would feel comfortable and they'd be like, you're good to go? So
I don't have like a set program. I do it based off of the owner and what they're going through, and what their goals are. That's another thing. So I try and teach them and instill these different habits and work with them on a weekly basis until we complete our training. But I don't have you graduate this day or you're good to go on this date or whatever, because I do think it is important to have the sessions that we're having them learning and having them focus on the areas that they need. So what you need would be different than what I'd be working with other dogs. So I try and focus on in the home, and then we work our way out. And then one session I usually bring my dog, and now your dog has to do all the commands and everything with my dog present. So they won't interact, like that socialization that we talked about. Your dog has to not be a jerk, when another dog is around, it still has to listen to you, because real world situation, you would need that to happen. And then depending on how all the trainings go, I'd like to take the dog and the owner to like a public location and that way we can work on another real world situation where they are out in public, out with a lot of distractions, a lot of people, a lot of dogs, and they still have to listen to you and respond to you. But you want to start slow, start at a base level, and then work your way up until you get to those high levels. If their dog isn't ready for that, then we don't do that, and we focus on whatever they need. I'm not going to just progress the owner to where, going from first session inside the home to second session armature works or something. So you have to build up from where you are. And a lot of dog training is really boring. It's just a lot of repetitiveness, and it's trying to keep the owner engaged and enjoying it, and keeping the dog engaged. Because if the dog is bored, then the dog's not going to.
So who do you say is harder to train, the dog or the person?
Definitely the person. It's because every person's different, So I'm trying to train the dog by training you, and so it's a funneling process. So it's really important to find out like how you learn and how you are receiving my information, so that way you can fix the problem. Because like I said, if I train the dog, it doesn't matter, because you're just going to go right back to doing what you've been doing.
Exactly.
So I have to teach you like, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And I say it nicer, obviously.
But you don't have to be nice to me. I know I messed up.
But I try and show them like where they're wrong, and like also like where they're right. Hey, that was good. Here's why.
Do you give them a treat?
Sometimes, like a little pat on the back and a good boy. But it's really important to teach you how you learn, because you are going to be different than your wife, right? Or people with different backgrounds. There's so many different factors to think about, and sometimes that's really hard because you don't see how they're taking it, and it's like, are you getting this? Are you like upset? Like I don't know. So it's just that's the hard part for that.
So I mean, so it's going to be different depending on. There's so many variables at play that you don't know how long it's going to take.
No. So there was one dog that I did. It was a golden doodle, and I was like, oh, it's a golden doodle. It'll be super easy. And I did the consult with a guy. He was all on board for it. The dog was running around, and like he seemed to me like this is going to be an easy case, and that was the hardest dog I've trained.
Really?
And
they seem like super hyper dogs.
Yeah, some of them are, and like that's the thing is like every dog is different. So like I never experienced what I experienced with that dog, and I still haven't since then.
So what? Well, I was gonna say what was challenging about it? Like what was like? Was it the energy or?
No, it was the opposite. So every dog is gonna want things. So like how are you gonna reward them, right? You do your business because you get paid. You also do your business because you like helping people. You're doing this podcast because you like to talk to people, right? But the biggest thing is the payment, right? You wouldn't do this for free. There's a lot of work that goes involved in this. So your dogs are going to be the same way. They're not going to do something unless they're getting rewarded for it. That could be affection, it could be food, or it could be toys. But those are pretty much the three payments that they're going to receive. My dog didn't like toys until he was 2. He didn't even, I could throw a ball and he wouldn't even go for it, which was really challenging for me. But he really liked food. So that's what I used for him, and that was his payment. So for that dog, he didn't like toys, he didn't like food, and he didn't like affection.
Wow.
So how do you train a dog that doesn't want to be rewarded? So for him, I realized that he just kind of wanted his space, and he just wanted to do his own thing. He was a loner. So I did a lot of pressure with him. I didn't like to do that. I try and make it a lot of fun. And
what do you mean by that?
So like I would pull up on his leash and like push his butt down when I was teaching him sit, and I was teaching him heel, and I was teaching him whatever other commands I was doing. And so for him, his
reward was you leaving him alone.
Was like I'd say free. That's a release marker. So I would say free, and then he would like walk away for a second, and I would give him a break for like 10 seconds, and then we do it again. And he picked up on that, and I was like, oh, this is cool.
This is how I get this guy to leave me alone.
Basically, he was, you have like people that work for you or work with you, and I think of it as like the guy that works for you is the guy that comes in at 8 o'clock because that's when he's told, and then he leaves immediately at 5, and he doesn't do anything extra, and he doesn't talk to you, and he just does what he wants. But versus the guy that comes in early, that's having fun with you, talking to you, it's a friend with you, and then maybe even leaves after work. He just worked because I made him, and then He didn't care to do anything extra. He didn't want to please me or do anything for me. He only did it because I was telling him to.
Yeah.
So that was really hard. I sat, for most of the first session, I sat and looked at him like, what am I going to do with you? So every dog's different, and that creates so many challenges.
How did that situation end? Like, was it successful?
It was successful, yeah. I mean, he turned it around, and I figured out what worked for him, but I was trying to do what I've done for all these other dogs before, because that's what it's worked.
Yeah.
And then here's the one time that it didn't work, and it's like, well,
that's cool. You figured it out.
Yeah. So it's just like, well, now what?
Yeah.
It's really important to just, don't think it's all going to be the same way, because it's not. Every person is different. Every dog is different. What motivates them is different, and there's a lot of challenges that you don't think about.
Yeah. So I told you I was going to ask you this one. It's something a little funny. I know you're on TikTok now, and I'm trying to grow my TikTok, and I noticed there's like some backlash to the TikTok dog trainers right now. A lot of people are saying they're condescending, and so now there's these like I would say normal dog, like just dog influencers that are kind of like lashing out at trainers now, making videos like putting you all down. Have you seen some of them? What do you think about that?
I just saw it recently. I have a TikTok. I'm not very active on it. I don't fully understand it myself.
I don't either.
I feel really old whenever anybody talks about it, because I honestly have no idea any of the TikTok trends or anything. But no, I watched some of them yesterday, and I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But like, the one that I was watching was that girl, and she has a lot of points. I think it's not just dog trainers. I think it's just anybody. Like, if you're in any dog group, don't even listen to anything in a dog group. It's awful. You could say, do you use the leash for your dog? And you'd have 10 people telling you, no, you shouldn't ever use a leash or whatever. But I think it kind of goes back to that. I think everybody in the dog community, whether it's a dog owner or you who's making something for dogs, or dog trainers or whatever, everybody enjoys dogs, and everybody wants to have a good experience, and you're going to share what works for you. And I think people just don't know how to talk to people. And that's the biggest thing, is figuring out how to actually have a conversation. People don't realize that if you just are nice to somebody and say, hey, like, how you're doing that is probably not like the best. I would try this, but they want to be like, you have to do this because I do this. And
I think that's the problem on TikTok, is like, that's how the trainers on there come off. They're like, they're basically like, you're an idiot if you don't do this.
Yeah, and they're wrong for how they say it, but I think it's really comes back to, they think that they're doing right. They see something that what you're doing is wrong, and they're like, hey, like, you should fix that. Like, what you're doing is wrong. I just watched a video 2 days ago, and there's a dog page I follow, and they had their dog, and it was eating a package, like a mail package. I was like, why would you let your dog do that? You're allowing that.
Yeah.
You're allowing bad behaviors to happen, and you're just laughing.
So they can get a video.
Yeah. And it's like, you're creating problems for the future. That dog was a puppy, and also I've seen toys like where it's like sunglasses, or like a controller or something. I don't know why people would ever buy a toy
that's shaped like something
that's shaped like a real life thing that you have, and then if your dog actually eats that, you're going to be upset, So in that situation, I really wanted to be like, hey, you shouldn't do that, but I was like, that's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
That person doesn't care about my opinion, clearly, because they wouldn't ask me about it. Yeah. And I think it's really important just to recognize, is somebody asking for your opinion or not? I
don't think anybody asks for anybody's opinion on TikTok. But
no, definitely don't. No.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming in. It was a pleasure talking to you, and nice to meet you. Yeah. I'll link all your social media. It's at Vernon Dog Training.
Vernon Dog Training.
I'll link all of his accounts down below. And man, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks, man.